review of The Thing. Now, not the 80s Thing. No, this is another movie called The Thing, and I harped on this on my my Rambo marathon, and frankly, it really bothers me when they name something either completely separate from the previous established naming scheme, or something that doesn't make any sense. Why would you call your prequel movie, self-advertised prequel movie, the same thing as the original? I mean, I just don't even understand it. I'm annoyed at the Dark Knight Rises title, or sequel to The Dark Knight. You just slapped on a word, and frankly, it sounds kind of stupid anyway, but this really tops it by far. I mean, The Thing, was there any thought put into this? Well, sort of. Long story short, this movie is not terrible. It's not as bad as some people might have you believe, but honestly, it's really superfluous. If you were thinking that going into it, yeah, it is. To be perfectly honest, too, when you're watching it, it's not that it's a bad movie. There are some good parts to it. The acting is not terrible for it. The effects, while obviously not multi-million-dollar, well, I mean, I guess technically they are, but not the $100+ million budgets. They do look good, and they are fairly inventive, but overall, it's just there's a stigma that you get from this movie that they just didn't understand why John Carpenter's version works so well, and this owes far more to John Carpenter's version of the story than any previous adaptation or the original short story. It's a movie that clearly has seen and is trying to both visually and thematically reference the John Carpenter version, but it just doesn't understand how it really worked and what made it good. What made the John Carpenter version of The Thing good was, well, I mean, to be honest, the concept. It's a fantastic concept. It still is a fantastic concept, and a lot of the movie gets by just on that concept. It preys on the innate fear of the other, and it actually has a neat plot twist, and one thing I will give it credit for is even though there's Americans shoehorned into this Norwegian base, they do play on that kind of race difference between the two people. And that's interesting, because again, it works with the whole concept in general. They did a good job there. But otherwise, it just seems like a retread. It's like, oh yeah, remember that spaceship from the John Carpenter version? Yeah, now you see a lot of it. Guess what? It's not that cool when you actually go up and close to it. And to be perfectly frank, that's what it really comes down to. This movie lacks subtlety. And while it does attempt to do things well and properly, on occasion, most of the time, it doesn't even bother. One other thing that made the John Carpenter version great was that while it was told mainly from one character's perspective, you not only did not see all the scenes that character was in, but it would also very rarely skip out to other people's perspective, and if it did, it was only small snippets. And this created a really great whodunit kind of plot thing, where who is the Thing? Because you don't know. You see that they may have been the Thing because of this situation, or maybe you were misinterpreting this situation. And sometimes the movie provides answer for these scenes, sometimes it does not. And that really raises the tension. This Thing, on the other hand, this movie, ends up showing you these characters' perspectives in fair detail. Oftentimes it will show you them just outright being attacked by the Thing, so there's no suspense. It tries this on about 2 times in the movie, and to its credit, it does work, well, at least one of these times. The second time is not bad, but in the climax, and frankly the last half of the movie, it just completely abandons this whole sense of paranoia and goes for the Thing running around in a crazy mutant form, killing everyone, knocking everyone off. And don't get me wrong, I love creature effects, I love creature features, and I can appreciate it from that standard, but even then, there's things that I find problems with. The creature designs are not bad, and sometimes they're quite good, but oftentimes they'll resort to things that you've just seen a lot of times before. They aren't frightening, and they don't work. There's 2 half faces melded in at one point, and you're like, wow, I haven't seen that before, you know? And it plays, again, a little too closely to the original without really understanding why it was cool, because a lot of these, the creatures have a mouth in their stomach, and that was one scene in the John Carpenter version, if you haven't seen it. And that was surprising then, because you've never seen that before, and you never really see it thereafter, also. So in this movie, on the other hand, everything, that's an established thing, that this creature has a mouth, like right here. And it just doesn't really work, frankly. It makes it seem both slavish and completely clueless. What can I say? But the story, it does end up... I mean, it's, like I said originally at the start of this review, this is not a terrible movie. It's just one of those movies you just give a big shrug to. It's like, why should I care at this point? You're not giving me a reason to care. The only reason I went to see this movie is because I liked the John Carpenter version. And this movie, it provides similar setups. And again, there's some interesting plot elements that they weave in, particularly with the blood sample, too. But overall, it just strikes me as a really generic and forgettable, and that's really disappointing, because The Thing, honestly, I think you can do another Thing movie. Whether it be set in the Antarctic or not, perhaps up for debate and a story idea, but it's a fantastic concept in and of itself. It provided a real sense of immediacy and intimacy with the characters, and yet also had far-reaching implications that were very easily imagined because of the nature of the creature. Really fantastic movie. This seems like a plug for the John Carpenter version more than a review of this new Thing, but frankly, they're so closely intertwined that this review can't really help but being an advertisement for the 80s version more than this one. If you like John Carpenter's The Thing, go see it. Maybe not in theaters if you really don't feel like it. But if you're curious enough and really on the border, you know what? You're probably going to get enough enjoyment out of it. And I'm a little more dour here than I actually was in the theater. I was entertained, but it's nothing really that special. It's fairly generic. It acts more like a creature feature slasher film sometimes. And it just doesn't really work in the end, particularly because the characters, there's a lot of them in this one, by the way, and a lot of them look really similar, making it even more difficult to tell. That may have been intentional, but I'm not giving the movie credit for that, at least. And especially to the main character. I don't want to sound rude, but did we have to have a female character here? And again, I don't want to sound sexist here, but it's not the fact that there's a female character, it's that they have a female horror movie character. And as we all know, there's only two types of female characters in most horror movies, odd exceptions, of course. One, scaredy cat female character, whether this be the variation of, like, the school slut or the nerd or whatever, that character. And then the fragile but deep will with a good strength and ends up living through the movie, the last girl, as it were. And this movie really isn't any different. It tries to guise it just a little, but only barely. And that's really the whole thing I want to get across this movie. All the elements are decent enough, but it really only... Its attempt to fool you into thinking that it's a good movie are really only surface level. This is not a particularly good movie. If you like the original, go see it. The Thing effects are interesting. You'll like the concept as you did before. The music actually does a good one. Is one thing I wanted to mention, though, before I left here. In that it is not bad for the most part, but I love when it takes cues from the John Carpenter version. And that may seem hypocritical of me, but when you're trying to establish a continuity, I am all for it, and more to the point, the John Carpenter version had fantastic music. It may be dated, technically, but it really works, and it still works when they use it in this movie. It's half-assed, but if you like The Thing, what can I say? If you're just a regular person wanting to go see this, go watch the 80s version. There's really no reason to watch this one, unless you're just down for, some Thing-like action, which, I gotta say, I was, so I guess I fell prey to it too.